Today on the podcast, we have Joe Walters, the founder, the leader of Gracie, Humaita, Edwardsville, a Glen Ed area jiu-jitsu gym and movement. This is an amazing additional gym in the Edwardsville area because helping people become their best selves and learn effective self-defense. We're going to learn all about it from Joe today on the podcast. Stick around.
Welcome to the CrossFit Edwardsville Community Podcast, where we hear and learn from our coaches, CrossFitters, and Glen Ed community leaders. Now, here are your hosts, Dallas and Greg.
What is up, party people? Welcome to the CrossFit Edwardsville Community Podcast, where we meet and learn from our CFE coaches, meet and learn about our CFE CrossFitters, and get to know our Glen Ed business leaders and the characters behind them. I'm the co-host, Coach G. My co-host, Dallas Amsden, is celebrating his anniversary today with his lovely bride. So it's going to be me, and I get to have the privilege to interview Joe Walters. He's the owner, the founder, the leader of Gracie, Humaita, Edwardsville, a Glen Ed area jiu-jitsu gym and movement. He's also a black belt in jiu-jitsu, an experienced jiu-jitsu competitor, and a chiropractor. Everyone, please help join me in welcoming Joe Walters. Welcome, Joe.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to get to talk about jiu-jitsu and share some of my passion about it.
That's awesome, man. Like we have, if we have our notes right, this is your first time on a podcast.
That's right. First time.
Dude, well, hopefully by the time we're done, I'll have you convinced to start the Gracie Humaita Edwardsville podcast, so we can learn more and do a deeper dive into all things jiu-jitsu with Joe.
Yeah. People have asked me before, they're like, hey, when are you going to start a podcast? And I'm like, I can barely remember to post stuff on Facebook and Instagram. I think adding a podcast to it would just be too much right now.
Well, you have your hands full, man. Like your gym is blowing up. And to our audience, in case you guys don't know, BJJ or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is one of the faster growing sports in America. I've been doing Jiu-Jitsu for about a year and a half. Joe is one of my coaches. I've had the privilege of learning from him in the gym, in person. But today on the podcast, you guys get to learn more about Jiu-Jitsu and Joe and the Gracie Humaita experience, as well as their origin story, their brand. Well, let's first find out more about Joe as a man, a founder, an athlete, an entrepreneur. Joe, are you excited?
I'm excited. Let's do it.
Let's do it, man. So easy questions first. First, for our audience, maybe the uninitiated, what is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Yeah, so Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a martial art, but it's a little bit different than other martial arts where we focus primarily on grappling, so like hand-to-hand combat. Depending on your jiu-jitsu style, some people will deal with like some punches and some kicks, but that's not the main focus. We here at Gracie Humaita, we will focus on punch defense, but we don't necessarily focus on it as an offensive skill. But a lot of it is like wrestling. If you ever watched high school wrestling, we just add in some submissions. So we look for, instead of pinning them down to the ground, we're looking for chokes, arm locks, anything else that could end the fight or end the match.
I love it. And what was it? Let's go all the way back to the beginning, Joe. What was it that first drew you to jiu-jitsu in the first place?
Yeah, so the first thing was I knew someone that did it, and they would use it against me, and I had no idea what they were doing. And the competitive part of me wanted to be able to do it back to them. So that was like the first thing. You got to kind of find it somewhere. But I do think it was the competitive part of jiu-jitsu that really drew me to it. I've always been competitive, even as a kid. But being, 5'7" and 145 pounds, I probably wasn't going on to college to play baseball or football or basketball or anything. But jiu-jitsu, anybody, any size, shape, athletic ability can still compete and do well. You just got to learn the techniques and do that.
I love that, man. When I was coming up, I was a very frail, very slight of build kid, and I was a very easy target for bullies. Yeah. And I think in the back of my mind, I was always drawn to the idea of learning effective self-defense, so I wouldn't be an easy target anymore. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. Like we want to look like we can take care of ourselves, like we can handle ourselves. It just as a one extra layer of protectedness if we are out and about. You go to public events, St. Louis being a fairly unsafe city in a lot of ways. It's good to have the tools to keep ourselves safe. So how long have you been doing jiu-jitsu, and what keeps Joe coming back to it?
Yeah, well, I mean, at this point, I don't even know what I would do if I didn't have jiu-jitsu. I remember there was a period like I got injured and I took some time off, and I was like, man, it's Tuesday night and, I'm done with work. What do people do that don't train jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think originally one of the reasons that I got into jiu-jitsu was because I wanted to be like an MMA fighter, just like everybody else. But what keeps me coming back is just the community, being around the people and having fun. It's just a good place to be.
I love it, man. I can speak from experience that it's a very positive vibe in the gym. I think that it might be easy for maybe an outsider to get it misconstrued that, from the outside, if you've ever been in an actual jiu-jitsu gym, you might think of it like that's where all the super aggressive and violent people congregate. And it's nothing like that at all. Like, this is everybody's very pleasant and friendly and positive, and it's just a very let's all learn together kind of environment, which is very cool. Tell us more about your journey to becoming an instructor, like the guy we know as Sir Joe, Professor Joe. Now, tell us about your passion for teaching and motivating people.
Yeah. So I'm kind of unique as far as when it comes to teaching jiu-jitsu compared to some other like black belt gym owners. I've basically been teaching jiu-jitsu since I began. Like, even as a white belt, I came down to SIUE for undergrad back in 2008. And I was already getting into jiu-jitsu then, but where I was training was like 50 minutes away, and I was just making that drive all the time out to St. Charles. And I wanted to be able to train more here in town. So I went to the college and I created the SIUE Jiu-Jitsu Club, which I'm not sure if it's still really around anymore. I knew it stuck around for a little bit. But yeah, so my first beginning, teaching and instructing was then as a white belt, which is crazy to think of now because you don't know what you don't know. And I'm like, man, what kind of stuff was I saying to these people and telling them? But I did that as a white and a blue belt. And then as a purple belt, back when I was training, it wasn't as like mainstream as it is now, especially in the Midwest. So even some of the blue belts and the purple belts that were kind of known in the area, you were looked up to. And I used to go around to other gyms and I would teach classes and seminars, even like private lessons, which to me is crazy to think about now. And then when I moved over to Missouri, I would help teach over there at the gym there. So I would help with the kids program, fill in with classes and all that kind of stuff. And then finally, as a black belt, I've always wanted to open my own gym, but I kind of got like forced into it almost. Me and my fiance, we were going to move, or we talked about moving. And so I was a chiropractor at the time, running an office here in town. And I told my boss, I was like, hey, you kind of need to plan to move forward without me because we're moving. I had that conversation with him. I went home, told my fiance, and she was like, hey, I don't want to move anymore. And so I was like, I just told my boss basically that I'm quitting. I need to find something to do. So then I started looking around and I was like, it's time to open the jiu-jitsu gym that I've always wanted to. So that's how I got here.
That's so cool, man. There's a lot of parallels between your story and the story of CrossFit Edwardsville. I started doing CrossFit in 2008. And back then it was like, I was like the only weirdo doing these crazy pull-ups and handstand push-ups against the wall. And like, I'd have to drive deep into St. Louis to do CrossFit with anybody else because there were no CrossFit outlets on this side of the river. And like, they would like pilgrimage like when CrossFit Edwardsville first got started, we were in parks and church foyers and basketball gymnasiums, and people would come in from Belleville and O'Fallon and Alton and Godfrey and all like congregate together in a basketball gymnasium, do CrossFit together. And it was so underground and so wild, but like you kind of cut your chops in those early days. You kind of hone your speaking, your teaching craft. And then fast forward to now. Now it looks very comfortable and natural when Joe is presenting to a room of 25 people that are all from this area who are getting their jiu-jitsu on, man. It's awesome. So speaking of the gym, right, is this your first business? Like, tell us more about your background as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier chiropractor. So that's kind of what my future was, was to be a chiropractor and then probably do teach jiu-jitsu part-time. Well, now that's kind of switched. I do jiu-jitsu now. I teach 6 days a week. I don't actively see patients right now, but I do plan to hopefully get back into that in the future. But chiropractic was my first real business. So when I graduated, I was an independent contractor. So I leased office space out of someone else's office. I actually knew him through jiu-jitsu. So he kind of helped me out. But that was my first business. I did that for like a year and a half, and then eventually decided to get a job working for a chiropractic business. They have like 8 locations now throughout the St. Louis area.
And then fast forward like to now, like the jiu-jitsu thing is your thing.
Yeah, it's awesome though.
It is awesome, dude. Like I got my start as doctor of physical therapy, and that was my main thing until the side project blew up. The side project became the thing, and here is CrossFit Edwardsville. So very cool. So share the origin story. You kind of touched on this a little bit up until now, but all right. So you're like, well, dang, I accidentally quit my job, and the fiance decided she wants to stay here. So then what? Like you just rent a building? Like how's that happen? Yeah.
So luckily I worked for like a really good company, and they understood, and I'd been there for a few years, so I had a good relationship with them. So they didn't let me go the second I had that conversation. But I talked to them. I'm like, hey, I'm going to be moving on until I figure out exactly what this is going to look like. They allowed me to stay on, so I wasn't just jobless right away. So I'm very grateful for that. But yeah, I just started basically just searching for buildings. I looked around at a few spots and ended up here underneath Mike Shannon's restaurant, where I didn't even know there was businesses located down here. So it's kind of a shock to learn that and then actually end up being here. But just kind of started looking around, found a place, knocked a few walls down, laid down some mats, and here we are.
The new place is super cool, man. It is super cool. Like we have a beautiful backyard view. It's comfortable. Lots of beautiful like ambient light from the windows.
Yeah.
I get the feeling that you guys might need to upgrade your space soon.
Yeah, so that's the current challenge, I guess, right now is we still have this space until next summer, but you mostly come to some of our day classes. Our night classes get very busy, like we don't have enough mat space, and we don't have any space in this building to add more mats. So that's the current issue that I'm working with now, is just trying to find a place that's going to have enough mat space, but isn't, too crazy. And parking is another big issue that I keep running into, because if we want to grow into another place, if we want to try to, have the mat space to grow into, we also need the parking as well too.
Absolutely. This is a highly quality problem to have, Joe.
Yeah, I'm not upset by it. I'd much rather have this problem than the other way around, figuring out how I could get a couple people on the mat. So it's a good problem to have.
I'll share quickly a fun story. So when I was working in physical therapy and CrossFit Edwardsville was taking off, our first location was 4280 State Route 159, directly across from IHOP. It's next door to what was it's down Sherwin-Williams. Like we had this like small 2,000 square foot facility.
Yeah.
And like, we had a 2-year lease on it. And in our first 6 months, we ran out of space. So we're like, crap, what do we do? But CFE was still kind of the side project. I was still working full time in the PT clinic. So fun story, I convinced my employer, Apex Network Physical Therapy, to rent our CrossFit facility while we moved out to get a bigger facility. So
Okay.
I was the landlord for my boss.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And fun fact, they're still there. They're still in that spot now that the sublease is over. Apex Glen Carbon is still in that exact same spot.
Yep, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, dude, it's wild how it all plays out. So tell us the mission of GHE, which is my shorthand for Gracie, Humaita, Edwardsville. Like, what's the mission statement, the vision statement, the core purpose? Like, share that with us.
Yeah, I should have my mission statement probably memorized, but to sum it up, we want to teach, the life lessons and the principles that jiu-jitsu can teach you. We want to use jiu-jitsu to teach those lessons to people, to help them basically just become better people, better versions of who they are. I think if people become the best version of themselves, then it's going to help every single person around them. So not only their family, but their community, the country, the world,
Sure.
and to speak. And so, yeah, that's kind of the mission.
Making better people. And I can attest as a neophyte jiu-jitsu player, I can still see how regularly exposing yourself to a healthy stress, a healthy dose of challenge, it forges a mental toughness and also like an inner peace. You know what I mean? Like I've said this before on our podcast. Like I am never in the mood to exercise, like ever, Joe. Never, not ever. But I do know this: if I actually make myself go, I go to jiu-jitsu, I get in a good hour 15 of training. By the time I'm done, I feel amazing. I feel amazing. Like all the endorphins are kicking in. The people are fun. We're high-fiving. It's a good time. I got a little bit better at the sport, and man, you just feel so good. It's amazing.
You don't hear people say like, "Oh, I wish I didn't go work out today." It's usually the other way around. Like finally, like once the time passes where they could have worked out, they're like, "Man, I should have went and worked out. I should have trained jiu-jitsu today." It's never the other way around.
Absolutely. This is true for me in the jiu-jitsu space and the CrossFit space. I'm always glad that I went and did the workout when it's done. And I've noticed that there are kind of different flavors to jiu-jitsu. And this is true in the CrossFit world also. Every CrossFit gym kind of has its own culture, its own flavor, its own style, which is very top down based on the leadership there, how it feels. This is also true for jiu-jitsu. So I want to hear from Joe's perspective, like Gracie Humaita, maybe like generally speaking, or maybe like Gracie Humaita Edwardsville specifically. Like what's different about jiu-jitsu there versus others? Not like one is better or worse than the other, but like the flavor is a little different. What is Joe's perspective on the GHE flavor?
Yeah. So, I don't think that I think jiu-jitsu, like if you go to a good gym with good people, it's kind of the same thing. But I think at least what our identity is it comes from my mentor, JW Wright. He says, good people, great jiu-jitsu. So that's what we want. We want good people, a good culture, and then we want to teach high quality jiu-jitsu. I have a saying, it's professional jiu-jitsu, positive environment. It's the same thing though. So that's kind of like our identity. But I think I've tried to expand on that, and it wasn't necessarily on purpose. So I did take for granted when training with the gym that I've been at for 14 years. I'm one of 26 black belts or something that have come from that gym. And I've always trained with like higher belts. Like you go train out in our St. Charles, Gracie Humaita, St. Louis. There's going to be 5 black belts on the mat. There's going to be brown belts, purple belt, blue. There's going to be a ton of higher belts. If you come to my gym and there's 20 people on the mats, there's going to be 19 white belts. So, starting a gym fresh with 100% white belts, basically, I really had to make sure that I put the focus on building a positive culture. And I think that I just kind of expanded on that all the time. Every class I try to make mentions of culture and safety, putting your teammates above you, like we need to work together to get better. You don't come here and focus on yourself. So culture is just a huge thing that I talk about at the gym. It wasn't something that when I started gym, I planned on doing, but with so many fresh new beginners, it's just something that I've had to do to make sure that our culture stays positive.
I think that is one of the most important things from me as an actual consumer, as the client, so to speak, is, I was in really, really, really good shape when I started jiu-jitsu, because at that point I had 12 and a half, 13 years of CrossFit under my belt. So I got the strength, the flexibility, the cardiovascular endurance, the speed and power, all that stuff, right? And I remember to myself, it was still super scary going to a jiu-jitsu gym for the first time. And I think that it really is, as a newbie to it, it's very, very helpful when you walk in that it doesn't feel like pressure. It doesn't feel like intimidation. It doesn't feel like the angry, like 20-year-olds trying to beat up on each other club. It really feels like the minute you walk in, there is that positive vibe and flavor to it, which is really important. It makes it feel more accessible to a white belt like myself. It makes it feel more welcoming. They walk in like, oh, okay, they're smiling, they're high-fiving, they're having a good time. This is not blood sport. This is effective self-defense, but in a positive kind of channel. You know what I mean?
Well, I think most people, if you Google jiu-jitsu and you watch competitions, it's a bunch of really in shape, younger people in their 20s just going incredibly hard. And you're like, oh man, I don't know if I can do that. But the truth is, when you go into a jiu-jitsu gym, the majority of people that come there are because maybe they lack, the physical conditioning and they're looking for something to get in shape, or maybe they don't know how to defend themselves. So they're going there to try to learn those things. It's not everyone that walks into a jiu-jitsu gym is not, 24 years old, huge, muscular, and just a natural athlete that's there to go as hard as they possibly can. Most people come because they have the same challenges that brought you to the gym. So you're going to find people that are very similar to you and not necessarily what you see on YouTube.
Sure. Which is it's a great reminder for all of us. You don't have to be a super athlete to get started with this. This can be an amazing fitness program, not just self-defense or self-preservation, but an amazing fitness program. Plus fun. So getting back to Joe, the man, the entrepreneur, let's talk about failure. We get some of the most interesting stories from entrepreneurs when we ask this question. How has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? And you kind of referenced one earlier with the oopsie of quitting your job. Or to put it another way, do you have a favorite failure? Tell us that story.
Yeah. So I like the way that you kind of frame that question, because a lot of people hear failure and they think oh, it's this horrible thing that you need to avoid. But failure is good. Failure means that you learn something. We have a saying in jiu-jitsu, you either win or you learn, so if you fail, it's a chance to learn something. I think from a jiu-jitsu standpoint, we fail literally every single day, every single rolling session or sparring session, you fail 1,000 times. And I think what that just kind of conditions you to and teaches you that you have to do to learn and you have to keep going. But from a business standpoint, my first chiropractic, office that I tried to, or business that I tried to kind of do on my own, I would definitely count that as a failure. It didn't go as planned. I thought it would take off a little bit more and then I would be able to move out of that guy's office and then have my own office and all this kind of stuff. But that didn't work out. I definitely did not understand how much work it takes to run a business. it kind of just thought like, oh, you just open your doors and you put, Dr. Walters on it and everybody just flies to you because they need your services. Or relied a lot on, I thought like friends would just kind of like share everything and they'd all come in and help the business just flourish and to be perfect. So that is definitely a learning lesson for me. I learned that it takes a lot more work than what you think it does. It's not just a little 40-hour-a-week job. You're basically working 100% of the time constantly, and you can't rely on people. It helps to have people, and that is a huge reason I've been successful with this gym is because of the people that I'm surrounded by. But at the end of the day, like, you got to put in the work. If you don't inspire people to share your story, then no one's going to help you. So I learned a lot through that business failure that has helped me out today for sure.
Cool. Well, all right. What's the best part of your work? Like if there's one thing you'd love to experience with GHE every day, what is it?
Well, I think that it depends. There's different things that I really enjoy with the adults, and there's different things that I enjoy with the kids. So I think with the adults, and I went through this too as well. When you play sports as a kid, you learn all these different like skills. You learn perseverance and you learn how to work with others. You learn to be appreciative and all these different like little lessons that you learn playing football or baseball growing up. But then we stop doing sports whenever we become adults, and all those lessons that we learn just kind of like drift away. So one of my favorite things is when an adult comes into the gym and they kind of get to like relearn all those things. They get to learn how to like work with people that maybe they don't necessarily like or are a little bit different than them. They learn to be appreciative of those people. So just kind of relearning some of those life lessons that we did as kids, but as adults, we've just kind of forgot them. And then with kids, one of my biggest things that I love to see, I love to see a kid have a failure, but then respond to it. And you can like see them kind of like get frustrated and then they kind of work through it. And I just know that they're growing as an individual, and that's going to make them, tougher. It's going to give them some perseverance and some grit to keep moving forward and keep on pushing. And that's the way that's the way we get better,
I love that. And something that we've seen in our CrossFit space is probably true in the jiu-jitsu space also, is that like our ideal client avatar is age 25 to 45, married with kids, working professional, history of exercise. They have kids probably under the age of 10. Like a lot of like the everyday experience of life can fall into like a monotony pattern where like I go to the job, I do the same things, come home, and it's like a lot of stuff is just like boring rote repetition from day to day. And then you go to CrossFit or then you go to jiu-jitsu and you have something that is like a complete and total adrenaline rush, that it's physically engaging, but also psychologically, mentally engaging.
Absolutely.
And you're solving problems. And you're learning yourself and experiencing yourself in a completely new way.
Yeah.
And lets you learn about yourself in a really cool way. And it becomes like the exciting thing that you get to do. Like I'm done with the 8 hours behind in the cubicle. Now I go and like the real excitement begins when the rolling begins. You know what I mean?
No, we have a lot of people, same age range. I would say like 25 to like 40, is probably our average members. And you can tell like maybe they were lacking something in their life, something that like gave them a little bit of like passion. And then they find jiu-jitsu and it reignites that passion. And then they can use that passion that they have now in other areas of their life. It's not just jiu-jitsu, but it kind of like reinvigorates them and it gets them going, and they're just more driven people because they found jiu-jitsu just kind of like got that spark going in them again. Yeah.
That's awesome, dude. Love it. I love it. So what's the hardest part of your work? And what's like the worst part? Like if you could make one problem go away forever, Joe, what would that be?
Well, I mean, the worst part is cleaning. I hate the cleaning. I definitely underestimated how much cleaning I would have to do whenever I opened a jiu-jitsu gym. Like when we get off of here, I have a few hours before like our little kids class starts. I'm gonna try to get some food, and then I'm gonna have to I just clean everything. So I gotta, it's just a bunch. But the hardest part is also the best part. It's the people, So the hardest part is sometimes just dealing with individuals, trying to get them to, kind of buy into our culture per se, learn some humility, get their egos out of the way, get them to accept that we're here to learn and we're not necessarily here to win. That's probably the hardest part of the job, is just getting people to accept those things. But the worst part is cleaning. I can't wait till one of these days I can just have somebody else come in here and do all the cleaning all the time.
Dude, you could probably have that by tomorrow. Like, I bet if you, we're in a college town here. There's got to be an SIUE student who's their cash is a little tight and they'd love to do jiu-jitsu. You ought to be able to outsource that to a college student yesterday, man.
I know. One of the things I'm working on is, since I'm still fairly new, it's really hard for me to let go of certain parts of the business and let somebody else do it, because right now I'm just so particular on how things are done, to where I'm like, I would hire somebody to come in here and clean. I'm going to walk in and be like, you missed this, you did this, you missed that, But it's a work in progress.
So we need to channel the INTJ part of Joe Walters and get him to systematize the process so it can be taught like a system to somebody else, and let the student take all that work off your plate, man.
So when I ran, a chiropractic office here in town, and I had staff underneath me and we had systems, it's just people don't always do what you want exactly. And I can just be very particular on it, but we'll get there. I'll find the right people. If you come on Mondays, I got a guy that I'm training right now to teach. I am very particular on how he teaches and the stuff that he shows, but we're getting there.
Cool, man. So let's get into some of the mindset stuff for Joe. Joe, in the last 5 years, what new belief or behavior or habit has most improved your life?
Yeah. So, I would say this is definitely more recent, and I think it comes because of how I got here. But I used to want all the conditions to be perfect before I did something. That was a lesson that I learned in my past chiropractic business. I wanted my mood to be right before I reached out and made calls. I wanted the weather to be good before I went out and did any kind of marketing or whatever it was. Now I try to just take action and move forward from there. I can't predict the future, so I'm just going to do what I think is best now, instead of just kind of sitting around waiting for the perfect conditions. And then if it doesn't work out, then I'll reflect on it. I'll learn from it, and then we'll figure out how to do it a little bit better next time. But definitely just taking action, not waiting for the perfect time. There is no perfect time. We don't even know what's perfect. We don't know the future, so just go for it.
It sounds like learning to let go of some of the perfectionism in the interest of progress and forward movement.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
So what mentors have been the most influential on your personal or business success? And what are the key things you learned from them? So to put it another way, who are the people that coached Joe to success? What do they teach? Shout out your mentors.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think I'm lucky. I'm surrounded by a lot of really awesome people. But in jiu-jitsu, my mentor is JW Wright. So I started training with him in 2008. That's whenever I started really getting into jiu-jitsu, instead of just kind of messing around in someone's backyard. I actually started going to the gym and training, putting in the work, that sort of stuff. It's JW Wright. He's been teaching jiu-jitsu forever. Black belt under Gracie, and just a great guy, always there to help me out, and gave me the tools that I share with everybody else today. But as far as like personal, I think like my family. So I have a great family who have instilled what I think are really good core values in me. And that's what I use to kind of guide my business and my work and my life now. And then also, I mean, my fiance, so Jordan, she challenges me, but in a great way to keep pushing me forward, making sure that I'm always trying to just become a better person and not just so focused on myself all the time.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Are you able to speak to like what are some of those like core family values that drive you? I'm kind of curious to hear like what are some of the value systems behind the scenes that are directing the action at GHE?
Yeah. So I have a list of core values that I try to put on display as myself, but also just kind of instill into other people at the gym. There's 6 that I focus on. And the first one is just gratitude, just being a positive person. I gave a little talk last night to my members. When you walk in the door, I want people to smile. They're like, oh, G's here today, because you're a positive person. And I truly think that starts with gratitude. If you're grateful for whatever it is that you have in your life, you're going to be a much happier person and better to be around. The next one is perseverance. If you don't have perseverance, you're just not going to make it. We're all going to face challenges in life. We have to accept them and just keep moving forward. If you stop, if you quit, you give up, you're not going to get better at whatever it is. Another one is loyalty. So I think a lot of people have a bad look on loyalty. They think that means that you just have to blindly follow whoever is above you, but that's not the way that loyalty has been taught to me in my life. You're loyal to people who are loyal to you, and it helps build strong relationships because we can't get anywhere by ourselves. If you can't display loyalty to other people, who are you going to turn to whenever you do have challenges? So you got to be a loyal person. Then integrity, I think it speaks for itself. It's just doing the right thing, even when no one's looking. Just be a good person. Then leadership, when we know all these things, we have to lead people. We're all leaders, whether we're leading people in the wrong direction or the right direction. You're a leader to people. I'm a leader to people. Even kids at school, they're leaders to someone. They may not know it, but all your actions, everything that you're doing, you have a choice. Can you lead people in the right way or can you lead people in the wrong way? And then last one, ownership. Just once you accept ownership of everything that's going on, it gives you control over it. If I accept that my gym is not doing good or my relationship with my family is not doing great, and I take ownership of it, that means that I played a part in it, and that means that I have control over it. So now I can take ownership and right those ships into the right direction. So those are the 6 core values that I try to focus on. And then there's a lot of different principles in there too as well.
I love that. And I know that all the best people that I know they're all very highly responsible people that don't point the finger and assign blame to a lot of other people. They say, okay, what can I control? What can I do to make XYZ better? My relationship better, my fitness better, my business better. They're all
absolutely.
They all have that humble mindset of, okay, I'm not going to complain if things are difficult. I'm going to take action and do what I can to make things better. And all leaders are learners also. So I'd be shocked if I learned that Joe Walters was not actively reading things to make himself better, or at least listening to audiobooks. So I'm kind of curious to hear what books have been the most influential for Joe in terms of personal business success. What's some of the things you've learned from these books as well?
Yeah. So recently I've been kind of reading a lot of books that go back to like gratitude and positivity and like just kind of like your mental state, putting yourself in a good mental state to try to attract other positive things. If you're constantly focusing on the negative, you're always going to see the negative. You're going to attract the negative. If you're in a positive state, because you practice some gratitude to get there, well, then you're going to see positive things. You're going to attract other positive things as well. So I think a book that I read maybe a month or two ago, it was like Think and Grow Big. Or
Think and Grow Rich?
No, I did read that one, The Magic of Thinking Big. That was the one.
Thinking Big.
The Magic of Thinking Big. I really like that one. And then I've read like different, marketing books that are kind of interesting. So like Seth Godin, he's got some good ones. The Purple Cow was a really cool one, if you've ever read that. And trying to think, what was the last one that I just read? I don't know. I'd have to go back to like Instagram stories or something that I've posted them on and see what they were. But podcasts, I'm definitely more into podcasts. Probably I listen to podcasts all day long. I like Ed Milet, if you know Ed Milet.
Absolutely, yeah.
Tony Robbins, Andy Frisella from like First Form.
Sure.
He's got a good one. And then right now, fantasy football. Football season's coming up too, so I gotta catch up on all that stuff before draft day.
Represent. Okay, so for Joe, what is an unusual habit or unusual absurd thing that you love?
I don't think it's necessarily unusual, but I'm extremely competitive, so it's led me to be good at like little games that maybe like other people don't even play or aren't really good at. Like I'm really good at the golden tee game. If you go to like a bar or a restaurant or something, I'm really good at it. Foosball, I'm pretty good at foosball too as well. Air hockey, I'm undefeated at Edison's in air hockey. If anybody wants to play, I actually took.
There, it's on, man. I'm telling you, it's on. You and me. I own Edison with my son on a fairly regular basis. I'm gonna watch for Joe there.
Okay. Me and my fiance, we went there for our first date, and if we play, let's say 20 games, I beat her in 19 of them because I wouldn't let her win. The one she beat me in, I didn't understand the rules, so I probably need to go back there and re-challenge her on that, so I can get that title back.
Didn't understand the rules. Sure, that's what happened.
Yeah, I didn't understand the point system. I didn't know how.
Confused me.
Other than that, I'm into hunting, fishing, outdoors, hiking. Love being outdoors as much as we possibly can. So, yeah.
All right. Last question is Joe. What are you most proud of in your business? What are you most proud of in life?
Most proud of the business probably just goes back to when people, kind of buy into the culture a little bit, they get humbled. Jiu-jitsu has a great way of humbling you no matter your circumstances. So I'm just proud, like when people come in and they're able to do those things, because to me, that means that they're growing, that they're learning, they're moving forward. Where that takes them, I don't know, but at least they're not staying stagnant and bored with their life. So just proud of my members whenever they come in here and they put in the work and they start to learn. What was the other part of the question?
What are you most proud of in life outside of the business?
Man, probably I'm just most proud of my family and my friends. I've been able to maintain some really good relationships with people that have been there for a long time with me. Not just jiu-jitsu friends, but like my family. We're a real close family, and I got some close friends that have been by me for over a decade that I know I can count on if I need something. And I'm just proud of that, proud of them and the relationships we have.
Okay, cool. Final two questions. Joe, if you could make only one statement to the world, what would it be? Or put it another way, if we could put Joe's message on a billboard that's going to be seen by thousands or millions of people, what would that billboard say?
Yeah. So, of course, I would love to put something about the business. I love to put Gracie, Humaita, Edwardsville up there and something about jiu-jitsu. But I think if I was sharing a message with everybody, because jiu-jitsu may not be for everybody. I think it would be to just raise your standards. I think that we as people, we accept whatever our like lowest level of performance or whatever it is that's going to make us happy. So like if I'm happy, being 180 pounds, but I want to be 170, I can promise you're going to be 180. Like if that is what your standard, that's what you're setting, that's what you're going to meet. So if you raise those standards, you raise those expectations of yourself, what you expect from yourself and what you expect from other people, it'll push us. It'll push us all to get better, to improve, which is going to help everybody around us. We have an obligation to become the best version of ourselves. That our family deserves that. Our friends deserve that. My gym members deserve the best version of Joe. So I have to raise my standards in order to meet that obligation to them.
Cool, man. So for our audience, if they want to learn more about Gracie, Humaita, about Joe, where can they go? Where can they learn more about your operation?
Yeah. Website is going to be a great way. So it's just Edwardsville JiuJitsu.com. Jiu-jitsu can kind of be a weird word to spell. So if you need to like Google that or look it up. And then you can follow us on social media, Instagram, just Gracie Humaita _Edwardsville. I try to put a good image of what our group of people are. So, go there and look at the pictures and read the captions and get a sense for who we are. And then come on in and check us out.
Awesome. Joe, thank you so much.
Thank you
for joining us on the podcast today. Had a great time talking to you. To our audience, thank you guys also for tuning in. Joe, any closing thoughts or closing words before we sign off?
No, thank you. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to come on here and talk about jiu-jitsu. I love jiu-jitsu. I think it can help people out, improve their lives in so many different ways. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Good people, great jiu-jitsu, right?
That's right.
That's it. Everybody have an amazing rest of your day. We'll see you in the next episode.